everybody. Welcome to the last Iowa Files for this season. Yes, on the count of three. Hi, Gail. Oh, I didn't even have to count. So, thank you all for all your support, for coming here, like to every single program over these past 8 months. It's greatly appreciated. Bill, our charming speaker, lives all the way out in the wilds of Grime, so I had to use my GPS to find his house to pick him up today. It was a wild and woolly journey. All right, come on, let's get serious here. I'm Gail Brubaker. I'm the Executive Director of the West Des Moines Historical Society, and we are thrilled to present the Iowa Files in partnership with the West Des Moines Public Library, thanks to funding from the West Des Moines Library, the Friends Foundation of the Library, EMC Insurance Foundation, the Iowa Arts Council, and our members and donors. So, Bill Kooker, sitting there very quietly, third generation of his family to manage Riverview Amusement Park in Des Moines. Show of hands, how many people went to Riverview? Oh, 2 hands. You're a wild mouse woman, I can see it. You put both hands up. His grandfather was one of the original owners. Bill, his grandfather, his uncle, and father all ran Riverview for nearly 50 years, maintaining the life and times of this Iowa institution. He is considered one of the foremost experts on Riverview and all of its 63-year history. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bill Kooker.
Thank you. The picture that's up there now is the founders. Back in 1915, my grandfather and Abe Frankel. I don't have a picture of Abe, but I've got him on a coin. So, and I've got my grandfather on a coin. He and Abe kind of buddied up about 1913, 1914, and wanted to build an amusement park to be in Des Moines. And Abe found the location, and my grandfather dealt with the bankers and the businessmen and that. But they got it done. It only took them 1 year to build it. And it was a definite hit from the beginning. The thing is that finding people to work there was awful hard back then, because we had usually about 180 employees. You wouldn't know it from looking at it, but that's what it took to run that place. And we did find that once we found people, they would come back year after year after year and return to the jobs. So they must have liked it. Working out there was a lot of fun for me. I managed it for several years after my dad decided he needed rest and wanted to retire. So I took over, and I was the last manager. The sad thing now is I probably one of the last people breathing that knows anything about Riverview. And when I'm gone, it's all going to be gone. I have written a book just about my experiences out there, and but both my sons have no interest in it. And of course, they did get to go to it, but they were 4 and 5 years old, so they don't remember a lot about it. But probably by far, the most popular ride was the coaster, the roller coaster. It was the largest in Iowa. Arnold's Park had one, but it wasn't near as big. And It served us for 63 years. And we only had one person that died in a fall from the coaster. For some reason, the teenagers, when they were on the coaster while it was running, liked to climb and change seats and climb back where their girlfriend was or whatever. And we knew it was going to happen, but this one kid was climbing over a seat in front of him to get in with some girls and bother them. And just as they went over a hump, the G-forces threw him out, and he was at the tallest part of the coaster. So he didn't make it.
What year was that?
I believe that was about 1929 or 1930. This one is 1955, I'm sorry. So, but my dad knew it was going to happen someday, and he was right. That was always his biggest fear. Of course, all of the people that worked out there, I don't know, we seemed to hire practical jokers. They passed their time and had their fun at the park playing jokes on people. And some of them were pretty funny, I have to admit. See if I can show you a picture of one here. I don't know, how many of you remember the tumblebug? Probably will if you'd see it, if I could find the picture of it. But it was like a train that went around on a wavy track. And one thing that you had to do, because the cars were so darn heavy, you had to back it up on the backtrack slope and then slam it into forward to get it to go forward. Otherwise it wouldn't make it over the first hump. And one of the jokes that we pulled on people is we'd tell them they were going to run the tumblebug, and it was a really easy ride to run and all of that. And then you tell them they have a lever there, one that pushes it forward and one for backwards. And then you go and have them see if they could run it. Well, they'd go and push it forward, and it would start to go up the first hill and then stop because it didn't have enough oomph to make it up the hill. Of course, we all know you had to back it up and get a running start to make it over the first hill. But our fun times were not telling the new operators that they had to do that and let them figure it out. The other thing, one of the most popular jokes, and one that I actually enjoyed too, but the last night of the season, which was always Labor Day, the couple coaster operators or other ride operators would go to their cars and come back with 2 full giant-sized boxes of Tide laundry detergent and pour the Tide into the back of the chutes ride right by the paddle wheel. And in about 5 minutes, you would just have a mountain of suds that almost enveloped the whole track. But that was a lot of fun. It didn't hurt anything. It just made everybody disappear. Then we also had several kiddie rides, 8 or 9 of them, that, like the kiddie boats and the little kiddie ponies. Matter of fact, we had live ponies that we'd put them on and they could ride too. Matter of fact, I didn't have a picture of it, but one of the live ponies was all white. And I was a big Lone Ranger fan back then. So to me, that was the Lone Ranger's horse, Silver. I think when I was 8 or 9, had a birthday party at my house, and Dad pulled up with a trailer. It had Silver in the back. Needless to say, I didn't want anybody else to ride him. I wanted to ride him the whole party. But he got to work out that day. He was a good horse. Pony. He was a pony. But it became a annual event. My birthday was in August every year, of course. We started having a white pony. There's a shot of one of the ponies, but that's not Silver. But the kids loved them, and they were probably one of the most popular kiddie rides, and yet one of the finest ones to run, because the horses were chained to a post that went in a circle, and you really didn't have to worry about it. We did have seat belts for the kids in the saddle. You can see it on this picture here. There's a belt that wraps around her and keeps her from falling off. This was the second most popular ride in the park, next to the roller coaster. It's called Shoot the Chutes, or we just refer to it as the chutes. But that boat would go through a tunnel, go through a waterway, and go through a winding tunnel, come out, and then climb up this incline, and a turntable on top would turn the boat around the right way, and then it would come down free fall, slide down, and splash in the big puddle of water. And guaranteed you would get wet, because it was not just a splash like a rainfall, it was like a wave of water that would ruin your hairdo or whatever. But the kids stood in line for it. And very, very popular. I hadn't ever seen one before, but I'm told that there was an amusement park in Chicago that had a Shoot the Chutes also. It was pretty much made by the same contractor and designed the same way. But we would fill it with soap suds on the last night. These were the flying scooters. Of course, nobody could remember their name. They'd say, you know that thing that hangs by the cables and swings you around? I say, yeah, the flying scooters. Oh, is that what you call it? But it was the flying scooters, and they would swing way out. But the jokesters on that, if you take your girlfriend on it, there was room for 2 in the tub here. And this front fin on the front would move back and forth, so you could make the tub swoop down to the ground or swoop way up in the sky. And it would just scare the heck out of the girls that were in there. But you hear this, all of them screaming at once. It was really something. But that was one of my favorite rides, and you weren't really a true Riverview rider unless you could make these things swoop to the ground and up high in the sky. These were the coaster trains. We had 2 trains, and not too many people know it, but we could run both trains at the same time on the track. You just had to space them out right. You had to let one go halfway around before you turn the other one loose. But the majority of the time we just ran the one train. It had 3 cars, and each one held 6 people. But it could get scary if you had 2 trains loose on the track and it started raining. Because rain was the coaster's enemy. It made the track slick as ice. And we had no control over the trains once it was raining. Fortunately, we never had an accident. This was a popular one called the Mirror Maze. And I don't know why, it didn't happen to me, but so many people walking through that thing bumped their heads. They'd walk into the mirror. But that was one of my first jobs, was cleaning all the mirrors every day. There's a shot of the front of the Mirror Maze. A lot of glass in there. The true secret to making it through the Mirror Maze in a quick fashion, like you knew what you're doing, is when you're going through, look at the floor. And you could see where the mirrors met the floor in that, and you wouldn't miss a turn. Third most popular ride was the Wild Mouse. It was also the most feared ride, or scary ride out there. Kids, teenagers loved it, but a lot of adults avoided it, and a lot of little kids avoided it because once it was loose on the track, it didn't take it long to get a rumor started that one of the Wild Mouse cars had left the track. One never did, but it gave it some mystery. There's the front of the Wild Mouse. And that's the mouse mascot. I've always wondered why he had a gun. But the manufacturer said, no, that's not a gun, that's just his hand over the eye in Wild Mouse. I said, well, it sure looks like a gun to me. We had a couple of families out there that were at Riverview a little longer than I was. They were an institution. I'm sure some of you remember Jean Jones. She would guess your weight. And she was out there for 40 years. Her husband ran what we call in the business the high striker, or ring the bell. And between the two of them, they had almost 100 years at Riverview. Nice people, wonderful people. And that's when we first got the Wild Mouse, 1959. It was a brand new ride for us. And that's me and my sister. We got the first ride on it. She was 13 then and I was 9. And she was scared, I wasn't. Then I think the most popular ride from those that I've just shown you, not because it was scary, because it was such a tradition. It was the merry-go-round, and it had actual hand-carved wooden horses, hand-carved by German craftsmen in Germany. Today, most of your, yes?
Whatever happened to those? Those are like art. The horses, the cars.
Yeah,
They're worth a lot of money.
we sold them individually during the last 5 years of the park and replaced them with fiberglass horses, which look nice, but it's not the same as the hand-carved wood ones. But my dad had 2 of them at home. 2 of them ended up at his house. I never was so lucky I didn't get one. He told me I could have any of the fiberglass horses I wanted. I said, no, no thank you. this was our last new ride. It replaced, I can't remember now, but it was called the Flying Bobs. And you sat in this car and it went around in a circle and it kind of went over waves. And then they had some smart aleck on the microphone of the ride saying, "Do you want to go faster? Do you want to go faster?" And of course all the kids are screaming, "Yeah, it's faster." But it was really very popular with the teenagers. And I think they liked it because of the nuts on the microphone, asking them to go faster, and plus the loud rock and roll music that they played. And we had speakers that were about the size of a kitchen stove. And so, I mean, they were loud. When they turned that up, Dad would come down from the office halfway up the park and tell him to turn the music down. It was too loud.
Bill, we have a question online. Somebody would like to hear about the boats.
Oh, sure. This is full view from the front of the Wild Mouse. It shows the exit, and it shows a Wild Mouse car up on top making its way around. With all that water out there, we had a lot of it. Actually, Riverview was an island. You can see it. You had to have boats. So Dad and his brother-in-law bought 2 Chris Craft boats. Those are the boats that look like they're wooden. Beautiful boats. They were way too much boat for that small lake. But boy, did they go. And when I was a teenager, learning to run rides and running rides, that was one thing I always wanted to do. I said, I want to be a boat operator. I want to run the boats. And they let me, and I didn't wreck one. I got a lot of people wet. Oh, this is George Jones's father. I showed you Gene Jones, the waitguester, a couple pictures back. And I think this is not her husband, George. I think it's her father-in-law. He worked out there too. They were all 100% red-blooded gypsies. So they were very interesting to talk to and had lots of stories. There's another shot of the island. Everybody says, how did you fit all those rides on that small island? Well, right there is how we did it. That and 3 parking lots for cars. And I always call this we had 18 rides. I call this the 19th ride at Riverview because it sat just outside the park at the front gate, Jim Dandy's Bar. And I bet we had more employees close that bar down after the park closed. I didn't really get into it much. I'm not much of a drinker, but I bet we supported that place the last 10 years. This is what the front gate looked like at night with the lights. You walked in across the bridge or walkway over the lagoon and walked out the same way. You can't see it, but over here on this side there's a lane for cars that people could actually drive in too.
Bill, another online question. How much did it cost?
Riverview was free to get into. We never charged admission except on the 4th of July because we had fireworks shows. We wanted to pay for the fireworks. So we charged, I think it was a quarter on the 4th of July, and per person, and the rest of the time it was free to get in.
How much was it to do a ride? Did they have different prices?
Yeah, depending on how big or small the ride was, but the rides went anywhere from a quarter to 75 cents. So here's a shot of the exit of the coaster. After you rode, this was a walkway that you walked down. Well, most of the kids ran down it. But it was always one of my favorite shots of the coaster. And people would stand in line and stand in line and stand in line just to get multiple rides in a row. We had a lot of wear and tear on these wood horses because they were just painted by hand. And in the 1970s or early 70s, these two ladies came out and offered to paint all the animals on the horse or on the merry-go-round. The frogs, the zebras, everything. And my dad was in heaven because usually it was his job to paint the horses and he hated it. But he hired them both and they painted the whole merry-go-round in about 3 days and did a beautiful job. I can't remember their names though. I'm at the age where names are slipping away from me. But they worked about 8 to 10 hours a day for a week straight and got them all painted. This was the merry-go-round building. Back then, merry-go-rounds all over the country had to have their own building, and so this was our merry-go-round's building. It could run in the rain. This is an old picture, I can tell by the dresses that the women and girls are wearing. I would say this goes back to about 1930 or longer. Yeah.
To drive that, the merry-go-round, is it like a diesel engine or electric
Gasoline.
gasoline engine?
Uh-huh. And a rubber tire. Gasoline engine turned the rubber tire, and the rubber tire was against the bottom half of the coaster, or the merry-go-round, and spun it around. So you could control the speed too, but you didn't want to, because if you made it go as fast as it would go, you'd start throwing people off of the horses. Yeah.
Did the merry-go-round ever have the brass ring you have to grab?
Yes, for about the first half of its life, from about 1915 to 1935 or 40. We finally got rid of it. I think our insurance company requested that we do that because so many people were reaching way out to grab the ring and falling and getting a chipped tooth or broken nose. So, but yeah, that had a brass ring that if you got it, you kept it or turned it in for a free ride. It was out of my reach, I know that. I didn't even try to stretch that far. Here's 3 happy girls. This is on the Scrambler. On the Scrambler, always the person sat on the outside of the row got squished. And you can tell who's getting squished, because these 2 girls up here were being pushed into her. But they loved it. That's what they liked about it. We had 2 shooting galleries at Riverview. One was a .22 lead gallery, and you'd shoot at moving targets and moving ducks and so on. Halfway up the back wall there, if you hit the duck, it tipped over. You see, it was 35 cents, and I think you got 8 shots. The other shooting gallery that we had was 50 cents, and you got 100 shots. It was a machine gun, and the object was to shoot the red star completely off the paper. And you'd be surprised how many people could do it or were steady enough with their hands. Both galleries were very noisy. Oh, I forgot about this one. It's not really a gallery, it's squirt guns. And all these kids are shooting a squirt gun that never runs out of water. But they're shooting at a tube, a plastic tube, that there's a ping pong ball in the bottom of it. And as they fill their tube up, the ping pong ball floats up. And it's a race. The first one to knock the ping pong ball out of their tube gets a prize. But this was really popular too. We had a slide. It was referred to as the giant slide because you had to go up 108 steps to get to the top of it so you could slide down. And you slid down riding on a burlap sack, burlap rug. The slide had waves to it, and if you were sitting properly or heavy enough, you'd actually get airborne and bounce down the slide instead of sliding down it. But this little guy looks like he's having fun. This is one of our operators on the ride that spun around real fast, and he's the guy that would ask you if you want to go faster or if you had any songs. For some reason, with the teenage girls, these ride operators were most popular. They'd hang out after the ride stopped and talk to them. Bill here, of course, he's a nice-looking young man, but he was one of the most popular ride operators we ever had, and we couldn't keep the girls away from him. Here's opening for Des Moines Carrier Day or Newspaper Day. All the newspaper carriers got to come out to the park, and the Register and Tribune paid for all their rides. Here they are coming in, because we just opened the gates for them. Usually there were about 1,700 carriers that came out. Here they are on the coaster, and here they are feeding their faces. Treats, hot dogs, pop, milk. But that was one of our bigger days. This was a very popular game out there called skee ball. And you would roll the ball up the ramp and try and get it in those holes that are marked with points. Naturally, the 50-point hole is the smallest hole. But we gave out a lot of prizes on this. That if you got over 200 points while you were playing, you got a ticket. And you saved your tickets, and if you got a bunch of tickets, you'd get a teddy bear or something. I don't know who invented the game, but it was fun, and I enjoyed it. I even learned that if you rolling the ball from watching pros do it, they would bank their wooden ball off the side. They would roll it so their ball hits the side, banks off of it, and then goes up in the holes. For some reason, you get more holes that way. But if you ever are at a park and they've got a skee ball and somebody's banking it, he knows what he's doing. Probably is a very good player. The little train was a miniature train, always real popular, and we had the ideal engineer for it because we hired he wasn't a midget, I think he was a dwarf, Stan Hicks, and he ran the engine for the steam train. He worked for us for about 15 or 20 years. It was really fun to see him before he started out going around. He'd walk down the train and gather up tickets, and he was taller than most of the kids. I mean, the kids were taller than he was. Yeah,
What was his name?
Stan Hicks. Stanley. He didn't like to be called Stan. This ride was the Rocco plane. It's the one that you got into like a cage, but then once it started and you're going around, you could turn upside down. There was a bar inside that if you pulled back on it, that would make the tub go upside down. It was also the ride that most people got sick on. I'm sure it was the going upside down. Here's a close-up of the Rocco cage, and they're going around upside down. This is one of my favorite pictures because of the smile on the girl's face. She's riding a ride called the Sky Fighter. Brought the flag with her, I think, but she was just having a ball. This ride is called the Scat. Has two tubs. You go up these steps here and you get into one tub or the other. And there is a seat belt, and fasten your seat belt. But then it spins around and the individual tubs spin around. And if you lift your feet up, you can lift them up off the floor. You're stuck to the side. Centrifugal force. And that was very popular. These girls are getting on the Rocco plane. It goes upside down. But we found that on busy nights, we could hire a couple of models to ride the rides. And the regular patrons never knew they were models or that they were plants. They were just going around riding the rides. They'd come out in their short shorts and their makeup all on, and all the boys would swoon over them. We had a little zoo there that had monkeys and what have you. The only problem we had with the monkeys is the teenagers would light cigarettes and stick them through the fence for the monkeys to smoke. And they'd smoke them. They knew how to smoke from watching the kids or something. And we had to keep taking cigarettes away from the monkeys and tell the boys, don't give the monkeys cigarettes. And of course, as soon as you went away, they did.
Do you have any pictures of the chicken playing the piano?
I don't know. I might have. Here's one of the Chris Craft speedboats. And the guy with the cap on in front of the steering wheel, he's the driver. But then all the kids are along for the ride. These boats were, I don't remember how big the engines were, but you can see the front end here. He's taking off and it's lifting out of the water. They were nice boats. One of the fringe benefits of having your dad own an amusement park is when they closed the park every year, every fall, we would go down to Lake of the Ozarks for vacation and take one of these boats with us. I don't know if Dad was supposed to, but he did. Here's a far away picture of the zoo. I always liked this picture of the Chris Craft. The boats, there was a bridge that went across the lagoon so cars could drive in and people could walk in. But it had a pass-through underneath, and when you took a speedboat ride, one of the things you got to do is at full speed in the speedboat go through the bridge, go under the bridge. And that's what he's just about to do. This is another one of my favorite pictures. That's just a little pinball machine, but Dad took on and pulled a chair up so his son could stand on it and play pinball. And Dad looks like he's enjoying himself as much as the kid. Part of the zoo early on is we had bear cubs in the zoo. And they would always play and romp, and they were fun to watch. And they were fun to take out of the cage and take up to the office and let it run around the office or whatever. They were very tame. And small. These are some older fellas just hanging out at the park, people watching. There's another bear cub. This is a young, happy lad on the bump cars. Got a big smile on his face. He probably just bumped somebody and knocked their teeth loose. Riverview in 1933 caught fire, and almost the entire park was burnt to the ground, including the Riviera Dance Hall, the Fun House. The fire started right after we closed, so there weren't any people in the park, but boy did it burn. Headline, Riverview Park raised by fire. 1,000 watched the flames.
the Riviera, like later on, like in the early sixties, did it burn or did you just close it?
Just closed it. In its day, that was a really nice ballroom. The floor was magnificent. Had a well-varnished floor, shiny floor, and the lights. It was a good place for a dance in the 50s, 40s and 50s.
Was it open like one night a week in the sixties?
Yeah, Friday night.
Okay.
Another shot of the speedboats.
My sister, we walked to the park, we walked to the park, and we didn't call it.
Here's the shoot the shoots with a booth full of kids. Everybody's smiling, but they are about to get real wet. The shot from kind of far away of the coaster entrance. You get an idea of how tall it was. The cuddle up. Some people called it the teacup ride. But you get in it and these teacups would go all around the floor, but they would spin. And here's another picture of the cuddle up ride. The tubs spinning around. Dad and his daughter at the flying scooter rides. I don't know if he just dropped her off and let her ride alone, or if he's just waiting for the picture and then he's going to get in. But she looks like she's having fun. We didn't normally allow you to take your dog on a roller coaster, but this guy obviously talked somebody into it. And I'm not sure the dog likes it. Same guy with his dog. We had souvenir mugs that people could buy. I think this is a complete set. Eight mugs. I think 8 mugs made a set. But all these pictures were taken at Riverview. This is an outdoor amphitheater that bands and combos played on. Notice it says Riviera too. There's a picture of it from far away. Another picture of shoot the shoots. Everybody's got their arms up. I don't know why.
Bill, we have a question question online. What year did Riverview open and what year did it close? And what happened to all of the rides after it closed?
1915 was its first year of operation. And the last year, I can't remember exactly what year it was, but the rides were sold off one at a time, one by one. Other parks
Okay.
bought the rides.
Did a bunch of them go to Adventureland?
No, Adventureland got 2 rides.
2 rides?
Yeah.
Do you recall which ones?
No, I think it was a merry-go-round, and I don't remember the other one.
Himalaya?
No, they had their own Himalaya.
They got part of the mirror maze, right?
Just they got some mirrors out of it. They didn't take the maze.
I'm gonna throw it open to Q&A.
Sure.
Because we're coming up on our hour.
That's fine.
Folks are more than welcome to stay and talk to you after, but if anybody has any questions, to ask Bill, here's your opportunity.
I
What
d-
was your favorite ride?
Huh?
Oh.
What was your favorite ride?
The roller coaster.
Well, if there are no more questions, we're going to stop our live stream. Thank you, Bill, so much.
Okay.
As I said, he's here because I'm driving him home, so he has no way to get home on his own. So if you have any questions that you wanted to ask him, please feel free. Again, thank you so much for being part of the Iowa Files for the West Des Moines Historical Society and the West Des Moines Public Library. Please consider becoming a member or donor. We appreciate your support. We'll see you again in September. All right.
Thank you.